Hey there, friends. I want to tell you a story that's been haunting my thoughts lately. Something that's as chilling as it is uplifting. It's about my buddy Alex and how a simple tumbler with a handle and straw turned into their lifeline in a world that fell apart overnight. I'm sharing this because it's a tale that grips you with terror but also lifts you up, showing how we can find strength in the smallest things when everything else is lost. It's a wild ride, full of twists and lessons that hit deep, and I think you'll want to stick around to see how it unfolds. It was a day like any other. Alex was at home, scrolling through social media, when suddenly the power cut out. At first, it seemed like just another outage, but then the ground trembled violently and a blinding light seared across the sky. Alex rushed to the window and froze. Buildings were collapsing, cars flipped like toys, and people ran screaming through the streets. Sirens blared briefly before fading into an unsettling silence. In that moment, chaos took over. Alex's phone buzzed with a last message from their partner across town. "Stay safe. Love you." The network died before Alex could reply. The apartment groaned as if it might give way, and fires sparked in the distance. There was no time to think. Alex grabbed a backpack, tossing in a flashlight, a pocket knife, and a tumbler with a handle and straw, the one their late grandmother had given them years ago. She'd always said, "Hold on to the little things. They can carry you through the tough times." Now, it was all Alex had. Stepping outside, the world was unrecognizable. Smoke choked the air, and debris crunched underfoot. People cried out, some hurt, others searching desperately for anyone they knew. Alex wanted to help, but the sheer scale of it was overwhelming. As darkness fell, the city turned into a void, the usual hum of life replaced by eerie stillness, broken only by distant shouts and the crackle of flames. Alex needed shelter. Spotting a small convenience store that hadn't completely crumbled, they slipped inside. The place was a mess, shelves toppled, cans and bags strewn across the floor, but it was quiet. Alex pushed a heavy shelf against the door and sank into a corner, setting the tumbler down like a trusted friend. Alone with their thoughts, Alex tried to piece it together. What was that light? An explosion? Something worse? The mind raced through possibilities, each more frightening than the last. Then, a faint crackle cut through the silence. A battery-powered radio sat on the counter, barely alive. Alex twisted the dial, and a voice stuttered through the static. "Advised to stay indoors. Reports of unknown entities. Do not approach. May God help us all." The signal died, leaving Alex staring into the dark. Unknown entities? The words hung heavy, stirring a cold dread. What was out there? As Alex sat there, clutching that tumbler, I can't help but think how fast life can flip upside down. 1 second, you're living your routine, and the next, you're down to nothing but a single object, fighting to make it through. It's a wake-up call to appreciate what we've got, because it can vanish in a heartbeat. Speaking of appreciating things, I want to pause for a second to say thanks to all of you listening. Our channel's been growing so fast lately, and it's all because of amazing folks like you. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It really helps us keep bringing you stories like this. Now, back to Alex. The tumbler gleamed faintly in the dim light, a sturdy thing with its handle and straw, a gift that carried more weight now than ever. Alex traced a finger along it, hearing their grandmother's voice again. In this madness, it wasn't just a cup, it was a tether to yesterday, a tool for tomorrow. Water, Alex thought. The body can only go about 3 days without it. That tumbler was their first step to staying alive. Sleep came in fits, the night filled with distant noises, thuds, cries, something unplaceable. When morning broke, Alex peeked outside. The streets were a battlefield of desperation. People darted past, some armed, others dazed. Society had unraveled in hours, and survival was already a solo game. Alex knew they couldn't stay. Water was the priority, and the tumbler could hold maybe 20 ounces, enough for a day if they stretched it. There was a park nearby with a fountain. It was a start. Keeping low, Alex moved through the shadows, avoiding the main roads where groups clashed over scraps. The park was a ghost of itself. The fountain stood dry, but a thin stream trickled through the grass nearby. Alex knelt, filling the tumbler carefully, sipping through the straw to avoid whatever might lurk in the water. It wasn't much, but it was life. That first taste hit like a miracle, something so basic, yet now a treasure. As Alex drank, the silence broke with a rustle from the bushes. Heart hammering, they ducked behind a tree. Was it one of those entities? A scavenger? Then a small figure stepped out, a child, maybe 10, covered in dirt, eyes huge with fear. The kids stared at Alex, then at the tumbler. Water, they whispered. Alex wavered. Sharing cut their own supply, but those eyes, how could you say no? They handed it over, and the child drank fast, a faint smile breaking through the grime. Thank you, they said, then vanished back into the bushes. Watching them go, Alex felt a strange mix of loss and warmth. Kindness was a risk now, but maybe it was also what kept you human. The tumbler was half empty, but that moment filled something else inside. Before leaving, Alex spotted a bulletin board, a flyer flapping in the breeze. Safe zone established at Old Mill Factory. All survivors welcome. It was old, but it was hope a destination. The factory was miles off, a trek through who knows what, but it gave Alex a spark. Tucking the tumbler into the backpack strap, they set out, ready for whatever came next, holding tight to the little thing that was proving to be everything. The road to the Old Mill Factory stretched out like a scar across the city's broken face. Alex moved cautiously, the tumbler clipped to their backpack, its straw poking out like a tiny periscope. Every step felt heavier, not just from the weight of exhaustion, but from the weight of the unknown. The sky hung low and gray, as if the world itself was mourning. Alex had been walking for hours, weaving through the wreckage of what was once a bustling neighborhood. Now, it was a graveyard of memories, shattered storefronts, overturned buses, and the occasional flicker of movement that made Alex's heart skip. They couldn't tell if it was another survivor or something worse. The radio's warning about unknown entities echoed in their mind, a constant hum of dread. As they passed a collapsed apartment building, a faint whimper caught their ear. Alex froze, scanning the rubble. There, half buried under a slab of concrete, was a small dog, its fur matted with dust and blood. Its eyes locked onto Alex's, pleading. Alex hesitated. Helping meant stopping, and stopping meant danger. But the dog's whimpers tugged at something deep inside, a reminder of the world before, when compassion wasn't a luxury. Kneeling down, Alex carefully lifted the debris, wincing as the dog yelped. It was a scrappy little thing, probably a stray even before the chaos. Alex offered a sip from the tumbler, and the dog lapped at the straw weakly. You're a tough one, huh? Alex murmured, stroking its head. The dog's tail gave a faint wag, and for a moment, the weight on Alex's chest lightened. It was a small victory, but in this new world, even small victories felt like miracles. As Alex stood to leave, the dog struggled to its feet and limped after them. All right, buddy, Alex sighed, but you've got to keep up. The dog, Alex decided to call it Scout, fell in step beside them, a silent companion in the desolation. The journey continued, and the landscape grew stranger. Alex noticed that the destruction wasn't uniform. Some areas were obliterated, while others stood eerily untouched. It was as if the disaster had a mind of its own, choosing what to spare and what to destroy. In one untouched park, Alex found a pond, its surface still and clear. They filled the tumbler, grateful for the fresh water, and Scout drank eagerly from the straw. It was here, by the pond, that Alex saw them, a group of survivors, huddled around a makeshift fire. There were 5 of them, all ages, all looking as worn as the city itself. They spotted Alex and waved them over, their faces a mix of hope and suspicion. You alone? A woman with a bandaged arm asked, eyeing Scout warily. Just me and the dog, Alex replied, keeping their distance. Trust was a currency too valuable to spend lightly now. The group's leader, a grizzled man with a beard flecked with gray, stepped forward. We're heading to the Old Mill Factory. Heard it's safe. You coming? Alex nodded, relieved to find others with the same goal. "Yeah, that's where I'm going too." "Good," the man said, his voice gruff but kind. "Strength in numbers. But we move fast and quiet. No heroics." As they walked together, Alex learned their names and stories. The woman with the bandaged arm was Maria, a nurse who'd lost her family in the initial blast. The leader was Tom, a retired firefighter who'd seen too much, but still held on to a flicker of optimism. There was also a teenage boy named Jake, who clutched a worn comic book like it was a lifeline, and an elderly couple, Ruth and Sam, who held hands as if afraid to let go. It was strange, Alex thought, how quickly strangers could become a makeshift family when the world fell apart. Each of them carried something precious. Maria had a first aid kit, Tom a multi-tool, Jake his comic, and Ruth and Sam each other. And Alex had their tumbler, a simple thing that now felt like a talisman against despair. That night, they camped in the shell of an old library, its walls still lined with books that no one would read again. As the group settled around a small fire, Alex pulled out the tumbler and passed it around, sharing the last of the pond water. It wasn't much, but it was something. Tom took a sip and chuckled softly. "You know, this reminds me of something. Back in the day, firefighters used to carry canteens like this. Kept us going through the worst blazes. Funny how the smallest things can make the biggest difference." Alex smiled, thinking of their grandmother's words. "Yeah, it's like a lifeline now." Maria leaned in, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "Did you know that humans can survive longer without food than without water? It's true, 3 weeks without food, but only 3 days without water. That tumbler might just be the best thing you've got." Alex hadn't known that, but it made sense. The tumbler wasn't just a cup, it was a tool for survival, a way to keep going when everything else was gone. It was a reminder that sometimes the most ordinary objects could become extraordinary when the world turned upside down. As the night deepened, the group shared stories of the world before, favorite movies, childhood memories, silly jokes. It was a brief respite from the horror outside, a way to hold on to their humanity. Alex even found themselves laughing at one of Jake's terrible puns, the sound foreign but welcome. But the peace didn't last. A low growl echoed from the darkness beyond the library, and Scout's ears perked up, his body tense. The group fell silent, eyes wide with fear. Tom grabbed a broken piece of wood, ready to defend them, but the growling faded, replaced by an unsettling silence. "We should move," Maria whispered. "It's not safe here." They packed quickly, the camaraderie of moments ago replaced by a shared urgency. As they slipped out into the night, Alex glanced back at the library, wondering if they'd ever find another moment of peace like that again. The path to the factory grew more treacherous. They crossed a bridge that swayed ominously, its cables snapped like broken promises. Below, the river churned with debris, a reminder of the world's new unpredictability. Alex held Scout close, the dog trembling against their chest. Halfway across, Jake slipped, his comic book flying from his hands and into the water below. He cried out, reaching for it desperately, but Tom pulled him back. "It's gone, kid. Let it go." Jake's face crumpled, but he nodded, wiping his eyes. Alex understood. Sometimes you had to let go of the past to keep moving forward. It was a hard lesson, but one they all had to learn. As they neared the factory, the air grew thick with tension. Shadows moved in the distance, too large to be human, too quiet to be natural. The group huddled closer, their breaths shallow. Alex's hand tightened around the tumbler, its familiar weight a small comfort. Suddenly, a figure stepped into their path, a man, wild-eyed and ragged, holding a makeshift spear. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice shaking. Tom stepped forward, hands raised. "We're just trying to get to the factory. We mean no harm." The man's eyes darted between them, suspicion etched into every line of his face. "You don't know what's out there, do you? The things, they're not human. There's something else." Alex's stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" The man laughed, a hollow sound. "You'll see, if you make it that far." He backed away, disappearing into the shadows as quickly as he'd appeared. The group exchanged uneasy glances but pressed on. The factory loomed ahead, a hulking silhouette against the night sky. It was their beacon, their hope for safety. But as they drew closer, a new sound reached them, a low, rhythmic thumping, like the heartbeat of something massive and alive. Alex's pulse quickened. They didn't know what waited for them at the factory, but they knew one thing. They had to keep going. With Scout at their side and the tumbler in hand, Alex took a deep breath and led the group forward, ready to face whatever came next. The factory loomed behind them like a forgotten relic, its rhythmic thumping fading into the distance as the group pressed onward. The message scrawled in the dirt, "Leave now or die," hung heavy in their minds, a stark reminder that safety was fleeting in this broken world. Alex led the way, the tumbler clipped to their backpack, its straw swaying with each step like a tiny flag of defiance. The path ahead was uncertain. Tom had spoken of another settlement, a rumored haven a day's journey away, but rumors were thin threads to hang hope on. Still, it was something, a direction, a purpose. And in a world stripped of both, even the smallest purpose felt like a lifeline. As they walked, the landscape shifted. The city's ruins gave way to overgrown fields and skeletal trees, their branches clawing at the sky. The air was thick with the scent of decay, a reminder of the life that once thrived here. Scout trotted beside Alex, his ears perked for any sign of danger, while the group moved in tense silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Lena, the engineer they'd met at the factory, walked with a quiet determination. She'd been a flicker of light in the darkness, her knowledge and resourcefulness a balm to their weary souls. Alex found themselves drawn to her, grateful for the way she'd turned the tumbler into more than just a tool. It had become a symbol, a reminder that even in chaos, there was room for ingenuity and care. "You know," Lena said, breaking the silence, "that tumbler of yours isn't just a relic of the past. It's a testament to how we adapt, how we survive. Did you know that the first tumblers with handles and straws were designed in the 1940s for hospital patients? They were made to help people who couldn't sit up or hold a cup steady. It was a small innovation, but it changed lives." Alex glanced at the tumbler, its familiar shape suddenly carrying a deeper weight. "I had no idea," they admitted. "It's funny how something so simple can have such a big impact." Lena nodded, her eyes distant. "That's the thing about survival. It's not always about the big, heroic moments. Sometimes it's the little things that keep us going. A sip of water, a kind word, a memory of better days." Her words settled over the group like a quiet truth. They were all holding on to their own little things, Maria to her first aid kit, Jake to his tattered comic, Ruth and Sam to each other, and Alex to their tumbler, a gift from a grandmother who'd known, in her own way, that the smallest things could carry the greatest strength. But the world around them was unforgiving, and as the day wore on, the air grew colder, the sky darkening with the promise of rain. They needed shelter, and soon. Tom spotted an old farmhouse in the distance, its roof sagging but intact. It wasn't much, but it would do. As they approached, Scout's hackles rose, a low growl rumbling in his throat. Alex tensed, scanning the area for any sign of movement. The farmhouse looked abandoned, its windows boarded up, but there was something off, a faint, rhythmic tapping coming from inside, like fingers drumming on wood. Tom raised a hand, signaling for silence. "I'll check it out," he whispered, gripping a broken pipe he'd scavenged from the factory. But before he could move, the door creaked open, and a figure stepped out, a young woman, no older than 20, her face pale and drawn. She held a small knife, her hands trembling. "Who are you?" she called, her voice shaky but defiant. Tom lowered the pipe, his tone gentle. "We're just looking for shelter. We don't mean any harm." The woman's eyes flicked over the group, lingering on Scout, who had stopped growling but remained alert. "You're not with them, are you? The ones who came before?" "No," Maria said quickly. "We're survivors, like you. Please, we just need a place to rest for the night." The woman hesitated, then stepped aside, allowing them into the farmhouse. Inside, it was dim and musty, but it was dry. A small fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering shadows on the walls. The tapping sound, Alex realized, was coming from a loose shutter banging against the window. "I'm Claire," the woman said, her voice softer now. "I've been here alone since it happened. My family didn't make it." Her words hung in the air, a familiar ache that each of them carried. Loss was the common thread that bound them now, a shared language of grief and survival. As they settled in, Claire offered them what little she had, a few cans of food, some stale bread. It wasn't much, but it was a kindness, and in this world, kindness was a currency more valuable than gold. Alex shared the last of the water from the tumbler, passing it around the group, each sip a silent toast to their resilience. That night, as the rain pattered against the roof, they gathered around the fire, the warmth a brief respite from the cold. Claire sat apart, her eyes distant, lost in memories of a life that felt like a distant dream. Jake, ever the optimist, pulled out his comic book and began reading aloud, his voice steady and calm. It was a silly story, full of heroes and villains, but in that moment, it was a lifeline. A reminder that stories could still be told, that imagination could still flourish, even in the darkest times. As Jake read, Alex noticed Claire's expression soften, a faint smile tugging at her lips. It was a small thing, but it was enough. For a moment, they were not just survivors, they were people, sharing a story by the fire, holding on to the threads of humanity. But the peace was shattered by a sudden, violent thud against the door. The group froze, hearts pounding. Scout leapt to his feet, barking furiously. Claire's face drained of color. "It's them," she whispered. "The ones who came before." Tom grabbed his pipe, motioning for the others to stay back. "Who are they?" "Raiders," Claire said, her voice trembling. "They've been terrorizing the area, taking whatever they want. I thought they'd moved on, but..." Another thud, louder this time, and the door splintered. A guttural voice called from outside, "Open up, or we'll burn this place down." The group exchanged frantic glances. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped. But surrender wasn't an option, not after everything they'd been through. Lena stepped forward, her eyes blazing with determination. "We can't let them win. We have to fight." Alex nodded, gripping the tumbler like a talisman. It wasn't a weapon, but it was a reminder of what they were fighting for: survival, yes, but also the small things that made life worth living. Tom took charge, barking orders. "Barricade the door. Find anything you can use to defend yourselves." They scrambled, pushing furniture against the door, arming themselves with whatever they could find: broken chair legs, kitchen knives, even the loose shutter that had been tapping against the window. The raiders pounded on the door, their shouts growing more frantic, more violent. The barricade held, but it wouldn't last long. Then an idea struck Alex. "The tumbler," they said, turning to Lena. "You said it was a symbol of resilience. Maybe we can use it." Lena's eyes widened. "The straw, it's made of metal, right? We could use it to pick the lock on the back door, sneak out while they're focused on the front." It was a long shot, but it was better than nothing. Alex handed the tumbler to Lena, who quickly dismantled the straw, bending it into a makeshift lockpick. As the raiders continued their assault, Lena worked on the back door, her hands steady despite the chaos. The lock clicked, and the door swung open, revealing a narrow path into the woods. "Go," Tom urged, his voice low. "I'll hold them off as long as I can." But Alex shook their head. "We're not leaving anyone behind." Tom's expression softened, a flicker of pride in his eyes. "All right then, let's move." One by one, they slipped out the back, Scout leading the way into the darkness. The rain had stopped, leaving the air thick with mist, but the path was clear enough to follow. Behind them, the farmhouse door finally gave way with a crash, and the raiders' shouts filled the night. But the group was already gone, disappearing into the shadows like ghosts. They ran until their lungs burned, until the sounds of pursuit faded into the distance. When they finally stopped, gasping for breath, they found themselves in a small clearing, the stars peeking through the clouds above. Claire sank to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "I thought I was going to die there." Maria knelt beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You're not alone anymore. We're in this together." As the group caught their breath, Alex looked down at the tumbler, its straw now bent, but still intact. It had saved them, in its own small way, a reminder that even the most ordinary things could become extraordinary when the world turned upside down. Lena handed the straw back to Alex, a faint smile on her lips. "Looks like your grandmother was right. Hold on to the little things. They can carry you through the tough times." Alex nodded, clipping the tumbler back onto their pack. They didn't know what lay ahead, but they knew one thing. They had each other, and they had the will to keep going. And sometimes that was enough. But as they prepared to move on, a low growl echoed through the trees, and Scout's ears perked up, his body tense. The group froze, their momentary relief shattered. In the distance, a pair of glowing eyes watched them from the shadows, unblinking and full of malice. The entities were back, and they were closer than ever. The glowing eyes in the shadows sent a chill through the group, freezing them in place. The entities were back, closer than ever, their presence a suffocating weight in the air. Alex's hand tightened around the tumbler, its familiar shape a small comfort in the face of the unknown. Tom motioned for silence, his eyes scanning the darkness. "We need to move," he whispered. Quietly, they crept through the woods, every snapped twig and rustling leaf amplifying the tension. Scout led the way, his senses sharp, guiding them away from the lurking danger. The entity's growls faded into the distance, but the fear lingered, a constant companion on their journey. As dawn broke, the group found themselves at the edge of a small town, its streets eerily quiet. The buildings were intact, but the absence of life was unsettling. It was as if the town had been abandoned in a hurry, leaving behind a ghost of its former self. "We should look for supplies," Maria suggested, her voice low. "Food, water, anything we can use." Alex nodded, unclipping the tumbler from their pack. "I'll see if there's a well or a stream nearby. We need to refill this." Lena offered to accompany Alex, her engineering mind already assessing the town's layout. "There might be a water tower or a filtration system we can tap into." They split up, each group moving with purpose. Alex and Lena headed toward the town square, where a dry fountain stood as a silent sentinel. Beside it, a rusty pump caught their eye. Alex worked the handle, and after a few creaks, water sputtered out, clear and cold. "Thank goodness," Alex breathed, filling the tumbler. The straw made it easy to drink without wasting a drop, a small but crucial advantage in their situation. As they drank, Lena gazed at the tumbler thoughtfully. "You know, tumblers like this have been around for centuries, evolving from simple cups to complex designs. The handle and straw might seem like modern conveniences, but they're rooted in practicality. In fact, during the Industrial Revolution, workers used similar designs to keep their drinks hot or cold while on the job. It was a way to stay efficient, to keep going even in tough conditions." Alex smiled, tracing the tumbler's handle. "It's amazing how something so simple can have such a rich history. It's like it's been preparing for this moment all along." Lena chuckled softly. "Maybe it has. Objects have a way of finding their purpose, just like people." Their moment of reflection was interrupted by a distant shout. Alex and Lena exchanged a worried glance and hurried back to the group. They found Tom and the others gathered around a small grocery store, its windows shattered, but its shelves still stocked with canned goods and bottled water. "It's a miracle," Ruth said, her eyes wide with disbelief. "We can stock up and keep moving." But as they began to gather supplies, a low hum filled the air, growing louder by the second. The ground trembled, and the sky darkened as a massive shadow passed overhead. The group looked up in horror as a sleek, metallic craft hovered above the town, its surface reflecting the sun like a mirror. "What is that?" Jake whispered, his voice trembling. Tom's face hardened. "It's one of them, the entities. We need to hide now." They scrambled into the grocery store, ducking behind the shelves as the craft descended, landing with a thud in the town square. From inside, they heard the hiss of doors opening, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps. Alex peered through a crack in the window, their heart pounding. The entities were unlike anything they'd ever seen. Tall, humanoid figures with skin that shimmered like oil on water, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. They moved with a grace that was both beautiful and terrifying, surveying the town with an air of detachment. One of them approached the fountain, its gaze lingering on the pump. It reached out a hand, and the water flowed freely, as if responding to its touch. The entity drank, then turned to its companions, speaking in a language that sounded like music and static intertwined. Alex's mind raced. These beings were not just mindless monsters. They were intelligent, perhaps even advanced. But their presence spelled danger, and the group needed to escape before they were discovered. Lena tugged at Alex's sleeve, pointing to a back door. "We can slip out through there, make a run for the woods." Alex nodded, signaling to the others. They moved as one, slipping out the back and into the alleyway. But as they rounded the corner, they came face to face with one of the entities, its eyes locking onto theirs. For a moment, time stood still. The entity tilted its head, studying them with an intensity that made Alex's skin crawl. Then, it raised a hand, and a soft light emanated from its palm, enveloping the group. Alex felt a strange warmth, a sense of calm washing over them. The fear melted away, replaced by a profound sense of understanding. It was as if the entity was communicating, not with words, but with emotions, images flashing through their minds, a world in turmoil, a desperate search for resources, a plea for coexistence. But the moment was shattered by a gunshot. Tom had fired his scavenged pistol, the bullet ricocheting off the entity's skin. The light vanished, and the entity recoiled, its expression shifting from curiosity to anger. "Run!" Tom shouted, and the group bolted, the entity's hums turning into a furious buzz. They sprinted through the town, the entities in pursuit, their movements swift and relentless. Alex's lungs burned, their legs aching, but they pushed on, driven by sheer adrenaline. As they reached the edge of the town, Scout barked furiously, leading them toward a narrow ravine. They slid down the embankment, the entity's hums growing fainter as they descended. At the bottom, they found a hidden cave, its entrance obscured by overgrown vines. They ducked inside, huddling together in the darkness, their breaths ragged. For a long while, they sat in silence, the weight of what had just happened settling over them. The entities were not just threats. They were beings with their own motivations, their own struggles. But in this world, survival often came at the cost of understanding. Alex looked down at the tumbler, its surface reflecting the dim light of the cave. It had been a lifeline, a tool for survival, but now it felt like more, a bridge between the past and the future, between humanity and whatever came next. Lena leaned against the cave wall, her eyes distant. "We can't keep running forever. We need to find a way to coexist, to understand them." Tom shook his head. "They're too dangerous. We saw what they can do." "But they didn't attack us," Alex pointed out. "Not until we fired first. Maybe there's a way to communicate, to find common ground." Maria nodded, her expression thoughtful. "We've lost so much already. Maybe it's time to try something different." The group fell into a contemplative silence, each wrestling with their own fears and hopes. It was a turning point, a moment of reckoning that would shape their path forward. As night fell, they huddled together for warmth. The tumbler passed around as they shared the last of their water. It was a small act of unity, a reminder that even in the face of the unknown, they had each other. But as they drifted into uneasy sleep, a new sound echoed through the cave, a soft, melodic hum, like a lullaby from another world. The entities were close, their presence a constant shadow. Alex clutched the tumbler, its familiar weight a grounding force. They didn't know what the future held, but they knew one thing. They would face it together, with courage and compassion, holding on to the little things that made them human. And in that moment, the tumbler was more than just a cup. It was a beacon of hope, a testament to their resilience, and a promise that even in the darkest times, there was still light to be found. The cave was a sanctuary, but it was also a prison. The group huddled together, the melodic hum of the entities echoing through the stone walls. Alex clutched the tumbler, its familiar weight a grounding force. They had survived so much, but the journey was far from over. As dawn broke, the hum faded, and the group emerged from the cave, blinking in the soft light. The town was silent, the entities gone, but their presence lingered in the air, a reminder of the fragile balance they now lived in. Tom led the way, his steps purposeful. "We need to keep moving. There's a settlement to the north, rumored to be safe. We can make it if we stick together." The group nodded, their resolve hardened by the trials they'd faced. They had lost so much, but they had also gained something precious, a sense of family, forged in the fires of adversity. As they walked, Alex glanced at the tumbler, its surface scratched and worn but still intact. It had been a lifeline, a tool for survival, but now it felt like more, a symbol of their journey, a testament to their resilience. Lena walked beside Alex, her eyes thoughtful. "You know, tumblers like this have been used for centuries, not just for drinking, but for carrying memories, stories, and even secrets. In some cultures, they were passed down through generations, each scratch and dent a mark of the lives they'd touched." Alex smiled, tracing the tumbler's handle. "It's like it's been collecting our stories, too. Every sip, every shared moment, it's all part of its history now." Lena nodded, her gaze distant. "And ours. We've become part of something bigger, something that will outlast us." Their conversation was interrupted by a rustling in the bushes. Scout's ears perked up, and he barked softly, alerting the group. They tensed, ready for another encounter. But instead, a small child emerged, her clothes tattered and her eyes wide with fear. "Please," she whispered, "help me. I'm lost." Maria knelt beside her, her voice gentle. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe now. What's your name?" "Lily," the girl replied, her voice trembling. "I was with my family, but we got separated when the monsters came." The group exchanged glances, their hearts aching for the child. They knew the pain of loss all too well, and they couldn't leave her alone in this world. "We'll help you find your family," Alex promised, offering her a sip from the tumbler. "But first, let's get you to safety." Lily drank gratefully, her small hands clutching the tumbler like a lifeline. It was a small act of kindness, but in that moment, it was everything. As they continued their journey, Lily walked beside them, her presence a reminder of the innocence they were fighting to protect. The road was long and treacherous, but they pressed on, driven by the hope of a better future. Days turned into weeks, and the group faced countless challenges, scarce resources, harsh weather, and the ever-present threat of the entities. But they also found moments of joy, shared laughter, stories around the campfire, and the simple pleasure of a warm meal. One evening, as they sat around a small fire, Jake pulled out his comic book, its pages worn but still vibrant. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice steady, "about what it means to be a hero. In these stories, the heroes always save the day, but in real life, it's not that simple. Sometimes, being a hero means just surviving, just being there for each other." Tom nodded, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "You're right, kid. We're all heroes in our own way, just by keeping going, by holding on to hope." Alex looked around at the group, their faces illuminated by the flames. They had become a family, bound not by blood, but by shared experiences and unwavering support. And in that moment, Alex realized that the tumbler was more than just a tool. It was a vessel for their collective strength, a reminder that even in the darkest times, they could find light in each other. As the weeks turned into months, they finally reached the settlement to the north. It was a small community, fortified against the dangers of the outside world, but it was also a place of hope, where people were rebuilding one day at a time. The settlers welcomed them with open arms, grateful for the skills and knowledge the group brought. Lena's engineering expertise helped improve their water systems, while Maria's medical skills saved lives. Tom became a leader, his experience guiding the community through tough decisions, and Jake found a new purpose in teaching the children, sharing his love of stories and imagination. Lily was reunited with her family, who had also found their way to the settlement. The reunion was tearful and joyous, a reminder that even in a world torn apart, there was still room for miracles. Alex found a place among them, too, using the tumbler to help with water distribution and sharing its story with anyone who would listen. It became a symbol of the settlement, a reminder of the journey they had all undertaken and the resilience they had shown. But even as they settled into their new lives, the entities remained a constant presence, their hums echoing in the distance. The settlers had learned to coexist with them, understanding that fear and aggression only led to conflict. Instead, they sought to understand, to find common ground in a world that had been forever changed. One day, as Alex was filling the tumbler at the well, they noticed a familiar figure approaching. It was one of the entities, its eyes glowing softly in the twilight. Alex tensed, but the entity made no move to attack. Instead, it extended a hand, offering a small, shimmering object. Alex hesitated, then accepted the gift, a smooth stone, etched with intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with life. It was a gesture of peace, a sign that perhaps, in time, they could learn to live together. As the entity turned and disappeared into the shadows, Alex looked down at the stone, its surface cool against their skin. It was a new beginning, a chance to build something better from the ashes of the old world. The journey had been long and arduous, but it had also been transformative. They had lost so much, but they had also gained something precious, a deeper understanding of themselves and the world around them. In the end, it wasn't the tumbler that had saved them. It was their ability to adapt, to find strength in the small things, and to hold on to hope even when it seemed impossible. The tumbler was just a tool, but it had become a symbol of their resilience, a testament to the power of the human spirit. As Alex stood there, watching the sun set over the settlement, they felt a sense of peace wash over them. They had survived, not just because of the tumbler, but because of the people they had met along the way, the lessons they had learned, and the love they had shared. And in that moment, they knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, with courage and compassion, holding on to the little things that made life worth living. The tumbler, with its handle and straw, would always be a part of their story, a reminder that even in the darkest times, there was still light to be found. And as long as they held on to that light, they could overcome anything.